One of the cars I've been asked to redesign the most is the Datsun 240Z, one of my personal favorite cars of all time. I've done the front view, I think it was almost 2 years ago now. The style in which I redesign cars have come a long way since then. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the rear view in this video. So here we have the Datsun 240Z. It's just a beautiful, one of these timeless designs. It's going to look just as beautiful in the 1960s as it does today, as it will do 100 years from now. It's one of these timeless silhouettes and shapes, and the specific part with the Datsun 240Z is this beautiful roofline that just dips down and crashes into the rear end, which you can see better in the side view. You can see that the roofline has a continuous curve going down, and it never really goes back up again. But it does here, of course, because we have this spoiler on here that's added onto this, which I think looks okay. I think it suits the overall shape of the Datsun 240Z, and it also adds to the time period of when this car was produced. So what do we need to do here to turn this into a modern car? Well, we do have, as I showed you in the beginning, the Datsun, or the Nissan 400Z Proto, which is supposed to be the next 400Z, which is basically I'm pretty sure there are not going to be a lot of changes to that car before it goes into production. But at the same time, I love the design of the 400Z, don't get me wrong, but I think it would be fun to just modernize this shape here with these proportions and the graphics and everything like that. So what I want to do is, of course, remove all these tiny chrome pieces that we have, which is very typical for this era, and upgrade those into something more modern, obviously. And same goes for the rear lights here. I think I want to, so here's the thing. The car itself, it's a very simple shape. There's not a lot of creases. You don't have any sort of air outlets here or something like that in the body. The body is very sleek, and there is not a lot going on, so we need to remove this as well, by the way. So what I want to do with the rear graphics here is just to keep it very, very simple. I want to have simple graphics on the car, so I want to make one single rectangle that goes across the width of the rear end. So instead of having two separate rectangles like we have here, what I want to do is just combine these two and have them be something like this. And then they sit inside of a chamfered, recessed area in the rear and the back of the car. Then, of course, we need to upgrade the wheels. We need to lower the entire car because it sits a lot higher than modern cars do. So we need to add some sort of diffuser here with some exhaust going here. I think I'm gonna go with dual exhaust for this car, and have the wheels stick out more, have them be more modern, and have, of course, this side here, we need to have some sort of side skirt or something like this to bring the car down to the ground and make it modern. So with that said, let's jump into Photoshop here. Let's continue and redesign this, and let's see how this is going to turn out. Alright, so modernizing or redesigning or resto modding, whatever you want to call it, that's what we're gonna do with the Datsun 240Z here. And the thing that I said in the beginning, that it's a timeless design, the reason for it is because of the simple proportions of the Datsun 240Z. It's a very simple car, and simple shapes tend to age better. So this car, you can put it out today, and that's kind of what I want to show you with this redesign. It's just, if you change just the graphics and the bumpers, the chrome parts, and all these details that are very time specific for the 60s, if we remove those and just integrate some more modern looking graphics and features onto this car, but keeping the overall proportions, you're gonna see that this could actually be a car that came out today, and that has to do with these beautiful proportions of the Datsun 240Z. So what about the new 400Z Proto? I do like that design because it does have a lot of similarities to the 240Z. Specifically, the most important thing that they didn't get rid of is the roofline of the Z. The Z has a very specific roofline. It's a unique roofline that when you see it, and in combination with this chopped off rear end, which almost ends in an instant, where all the curvatures from the shoulder line and you have the curvature from the roofline abruptly just ends, it creates a very dynamic forward motion when you look at this car from a side view. So you have the sloping rear, the sloping roofline that never goes back up again or dips back into a some sort of integrated ducktail. Instead, this is a C shape instead of an S curve. And in combination with the rake A-pillar, the very straight and very angular A-pillar, that is the typical Z line. So if you have those things in place on any model that you make, it's going to be a Z model, no matter what you make with the rest of the body of the car. So when I do these redesigns, I've got a lot of questions. So how to start making these yourself. So when you have a picture like this or an image, I use the color picker a lot here, and the color picker is you just basically you figure out where the light source are, and you already have that visible in these photos because you can see where the highlights are. For example, the highlights on this car, we have the highlights on the roof, and we have the highlight on the shoulder line, which you can see are lighter than the rest of the body of the car. So you have that shade already done. You also have the shade of the shadowy parts. So what parts are laying in the shadow. So you use those two shades and you play around with those to sculpt new designs and new shapes of the car. So I just color pick the highlight, for example, and that gives me the specific green or yellowish color that I need to create another highlight somewhere else on the car, which I'm gonna do in the rear. So I'm gonna create a chamfer right above the new diffuser that we're gonna create here, and make a highlight there, and also make a shadow chamfer right above the diffuser that kind of outlines the diffuser. So I'm going to show you exactly what I mean here with using the color picker, and I'm using Photoshop, of course, to create these redesigns. It's the only software I use, and I've been using it for over, I would say, over 15 years now. Overall, I just think it would be cool to take some of these very nostalgic designs and shapes and not really do a lot to them. Yes, I do realize that if you want to put a car into production today, there are 52,000 new regulations that you need to abide by compared to the 60s. For example, you need to have a certain thickness of the A-pillar, which is going to ruin this specific design unless you make... What you could do to solve that problem is to make the A-pillar thick behind the glass. So if you have a tinted glass, you can't really see how thick the A-pillar is, and the only part of the A-pillar that's visible is a thin painted strip of the which is a part of the A-pillar that is visible on the outside, but behind that you have a thicker A-pillar. So there's always ways that you can solve these new regulations by using graphic design and by using some come up with some smart solutions for those specific areas, such as the A-pillar, and also bringing the car down to the ground. It's one of these regulations that you can't have a car sitting as high as you had in the 60s. Just look at the muscle cars, for example. They would be suitable for off-roaders today if they were come out with the same kind of ground clearance as they had back in the 60s and 70s. So we need to bring this down, but that's not a problem. We can just add some black parts, because that means that the black parts are not really going to have any visual impact on the car, especially if you have it in a bright color like this. You're going to focus on the bright colors of the car, and it kind of looks like the car ends where the bright color ends as well. Especially if you see this, if you were to see this in a low light, for example, you don't really notice the lower side skirt that we have here on the car. It's going to blend in with the background, and all you're gonna see is the actual body color, and it looks like the car ends at a much higher level than it actually does, and that will then bring back this 60s feel of the 240Z design. So the reason I wanted to have a very, very simple graphics in the rear, because I think that's where we're headed in in car design in general. And I've said this before, that I think it's going to be more focused on specific features or proportions of specific car models that are going to stick out. So larger features instead of just tiny little styling curvatures and outlets and inlays in the body of the car. Instead of that, we're going to remove all these, and you can see this coming out now. Specifically, if you look at, for example, the new Mitsubishi Eclipse Cross, I think it's called. The previous one, total disaster, a lot of overstyling, and way more things added to the car than is necessary. And I know they have a new one coming out now, and it looks a lot better. It's not gonna win any beauty contest, but I feel like all brands are heading that direction, where They dial back the overstyling of cars. They focus on like key specific proportions to make the identity of the car, in combination with very simple graphic design added onto those brand specific proportions. And that's my idea behind the rear end of this car. And here it is, guys. This is my redesign or modernization or resto-mod, whatever you want to call it, of the Datsun 240Z, and I really love the way this turned out. Simplify everything, remove, and less is more when it comes to this redesign here. If you want to pick out one of these awesome, comfortable Datsun 240Z paintings made by yours truly, you can go and do that down in my shop below, and also check out the new Doodle collection. We'll be adding more designs to that collection in January, so go check it out in the store down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'm the TheSketchMonkey. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.